Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What's Next, where I talk to people about what the future holds, what we can create during this time of uncertainty into our very certain future. And we've had a lot of marketing opinions, a lot of business opinions, and I'm talking to my friend Antonio Sausys. Antonio.
Hello, Mike.
Antonio is a psychosomatic psychologist who specializes in grief therapy. And the reason I find him so fascinating, there are 1,000 reasons I find him fascinating and know him to be a good friend. But I want to talk with you, Antonio, about this process that we are going through, which I think could be called grief. And you have some very interesting ideas about where we are and how we can move forward. Good morning.
Good morning, Mike. And I'm glad you resonated with the idea of grief. Most people are resonating with it. And perhaps if I tell you that grief is the normal response to the loss of things or people we are attached to. And in this context, attachment refers to a very strong emotional bond that humans establish through which our happiness, our well-being, our safety depend on the presence of a person or the continuous availability of an object. So if those objects, if those people are with us, we are happy, we are safe, our well-being is assured. If they are not, then it is not. Then, of course, because all things are impermanent, all those things that we depended on go one way or the other. And when they go, they spark a grieving process. In this moment in the world, most of the things we were attached to, most of the things we thought our safety and well-being depended on are gone. And so we can say that we are at the starting point of a very big and unprecedented global grief, where we're all going to grieve these losses. And some of them may come back, but truth is the world will never come back to this exact same order as before. Some changes will happen. So in addition to this, we identify as individuals ourselves with our attachments. For example, when the Giants won, some of the San Francisco Bay Area, we say, we won. We were not playing there. They didn't pay us millions of dollars to be in the game. And we say, we won. So we naturally identify with those things or people we are attached to. And when they go, part of who we are is also gone. Only that we continue living not very sure of who we are, of what this new reality is. And then we can use our feelings, our insights, our own reactivity during grief to understand who that new self is. Maybe you thought in your life you always wanted to talk to people, you have a very important loss, you see yourself isolated and not really wanting to talk to people and going within. So in the new identity that you're going to establish, would you like to be always the person that goes out and be with people? Or would you like to consider being with yourself more as when you were grieving, as when you discovered that you liked it, who you were, what worked? So, because this is the normal trajectory of a grieving process, I suppose that when we are somehow completed with this global grief process, a new world identity may arise. And so, for us to, in this moment, capture, acknowledge, become aware of what we're feeling, how is it feeling, what we like, what we don't like, can be then used as the basis to establish that new identity of the world. And so that is my hope. That's what I hope is going to happen. But interestingly enough, a grief therapist named Vicky Panakotakos, she has created a little process where she asks individual 4 questions, and then she gives the answers to those questions with some processing, and that document asking people, what do you like, what didn't you like, what would you bring back, what would you not bring back, serves as a little document for you to hold yourself accountable of what you saw, what you liked when you were grieving. And so I have this idea that it would be interesting that in this moment, because, I've been hearing a lot of people say, oh, I love not driving. Wow, I love now to have time for myself. Oh my God, it's so great not to have to dress in some way all the time. Oh, it's wonderful. I've been calling my friends that I haven't called for years, and now I can call them. So despite the lockdowns, despite the restrictions that we're going through because of the coronavirus, there's a lot of things that are sprouting as awareness, as things people understand, or that we are doing collectively. So, for example, we've been thinking of reducing the gas emissions in a such and such percent in such and such years. And now we reduced the gas emissions to 50% in just 2 weeks. So all that we thought we were not able, we could never do, that's impossible. We did it.
Everything's possible. All of a sudden.
Everything's possible. Correct.
Everything's possible.
Correct. And so I had this idea, and I'm trying to materialize it, to create somehow a global survey, something that people can in this moment use to record what they are feeling. And so basically, the 4 questions now adapted to this global grief process would be, what are you experiencing now that you want to include in your life after coronavirus?
Right.
So the second question is, what are you experiencing now that you don't want to include in your life after coronavirus? So what I'm proposing is that people just take a moment, now that we are all locked down and that when we don't have anybody else to call or any other show to watch, we have to be with ourselves. This is a good moment to ask of ourselves, what is it in this moment of life that I'm liking? That after coronavirus, when things change, I would like to keep, I would like to not let go of. And what are the things I'm going through in this moment that I would not want to keep? So perhaps somebody can say, I would love to work less hours. I would like to not commute. I would like to see a clean air. And for example, I would not like to be restricted in my ability to have contact with others. I would not like to not be able to travel. So what are those things? And then on the other hand, the third and fourth question is more towards the pre-life, the pre-coronavirus life, and what we would bring back or not. So the third question is, what did you have in your pre-coronavirus life that you want to bring back to your life after coronavirus? And what did you have in your pre-existing life order or organization or feelings that you do not want to bring back? And so the idea would then be to have that a little bit as a document. When we are in that moment again, when we are deciding, okay, are we going to have as much travel as before or not? Are we going to rely on a healthcare system that somebody organizes and we have to pay, and if we didn't pay, what happens with testing? Are we going to understand an economic order of the world where consumerism is one of the most important things happening? Are we going completely back to that? Are we not? I was reading the other day, people in India can see the Himalayas for the first time because of the clean air and the huge pollution. And so, do I want to see every day what's the world around me or not? Or do I not want? So that was the idea that inspired this conversation.
And I love it because it's through the process of grief, which I think many associate to be a bad, terrible process that's painful, where you're just grieving. From you, I have learned that grief is a process that includes, in many cases, a rebirth, a reawakening. And clearly in this case, I love the idea that what we're doing today, now in our lives, we must look at, because that is going to be the future that we create. And that gives me pause greatly in my incessant need to try to correct people on Facebook. And I noticed that, don't want to do that in the future. And wow, you know what? It's really fun to go garden at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Correct.
I do want to take that into the future. So
correct.
I really appreciate your time. I look forward
Yes.
to adding the link to your survey to the the paragraph
Yes,
around this
sure.
video.
Thank
And
you.
I appreciate this beautiful way of looking forward.
And thank you, Mike. Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. It's a good idea to have someone saying, what are the ideas? You know, it is about recording these things, because unfortunately, when we go back to the life after coronavirus, a lot of things may change forever, and a lot of things we're going to push to bring back based on that idea of attachment.
Right.
So perhaps the most important thing is the spiritual truth that grief delivers through grief. I mean, delivered through grief, which is all things are impermanent. All things are impermanent, so will this situation be.
I will take that as the final nugget in this conversation, because with all things being impermanent, we know that getting through this is something that we can do.
Correct.
Antonio Sausys, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you into the future.